Did you open this video thinking, well, I suppose the only evolution is that each year it will look a little better and that's it? The reality is that you can't even imagine how many times the lighting in the games of this series has changed drastically, and in fact, not always for the better. In fact, I would like to start the video by asking you a question. We are not going to answer it. I just want you to reflect on it. Which lighting do you think is more realistic of these two that I present to you below? Is it 1 or 2? I'm not going to answer it. Just reflect on it and let's get started. Before we begin, a brief note. We are going to compare onboards and TV cameras, that is outside cameras, which is important because the real homeboard cameras, those from F1, those from Formula 1, have many filters and they really do not look like what a person would see from the stands. The normal lighting of that place, the homeboard are very filtered, and that, well, makes it more complicated because they are like two different types of lighting, but we are still going to analyze it. In the homeboard, we will always differentiate between car graphics, the car graphics as such, the reflections, how it looks, the definition, and on the other hand, we will analyze the environment, that is what the track is, the curbs, the stands, the sky, all of that which also forms part of the image, obviously. If we talk about the Codemasters series, we should obviously start with Formula 1 2009, but we are not going to analyze Formula 1 2009 because it is a very particular game that didn't even come out for the major consoles. For PlayStation 3, for Xbox 360, so we will focus on the first strong, powerful release from Codemasters, which was Formula 1 2000. We are already starting by looking at the first images of F1 2010, which serves as the introduction. From here, we will begin to compare it with the following games. But the first thing we can confirm about F1 2010 is that it features very ambitious lighting that I personally love. It's true that during the day, it had a filter that was somewhat sepia. A bit strange, which didn't fully convince, but it looked super good and very realistic. It's true that, as I said, they went a little overboard with the sepia filter, and that was what penalized it a bit in this sense, right? But we are not talking about daytime, because that sepia filter existed during the day. We are talking about nighttime lighting, and the truth is that it must be said that the nighttime lighting looks very good. It looks very beautiful. Here, there is hardly any trace of that sepia filter, and it must be said that it feels very natural. The darkness we have on the screen feels very natural, but at the same time it must be said that it also looks very dull. In other words, the image is too dim, which is somewhat similar to what happened with the daylight filter. This game had very muted tones and very poor lighting in the sense of low brightness. When we have to consider that in Formula 1 a circuit like Singapore is very well lit, meaning the light looks like it's daytime if you look at an onboard view, for example. So yes, it would seem like an image of anyone driving a car at night, with not too much light, although it is perfectly visible, but as I said, in real-life situations, the light appears much brighter. But overall, my feeling is that it conveys the sense of darkness and night very well, and I really like that, so I think it is a very good introduction. And now, we move on to what is truly important in this video, which is the comparison with the upcoming games, because in the end, this video is about seeing how that nighttime lighting evolves. So, let's move on to Formula 1 2011. And what do we find? What is the first thing we think of when we see a video of the night lighting in Singapore? In this case, with the McLaren from Formula 1 2011. Well, the first thing that most of you will be thinking is, well, what a piece of trash. What a load of garbage. What do we have here? How can a game deteriorate so much from one to another? And I partly agree. I completely agree. Because here we already have, look how little time it took to arrive. The first downgrade. And I tell you that it is by no means the strongest aspect of this video, so pay attention. But yes, the reality is that Formula 1.11 presented us with gameplay that had too much color saturation, a lot of contrast, and elements that were too defined on the track. For example, the track lines look as if they are placed almost like objects on the track. In other words, they appear too sharp, too well defined. In reality, the track lines are diffuse, sometimes even half erased. They are not entirely visible. I didn't like it too much. The truth is that the reflection of the cars is not good at all. If you notice how the car looks, not only the environment we are talking about, but the car itself looks quite bad. It looks very unnatural. This is what I was referring to earlier with Formula 110, where despite the image being dim and all that, I think we can agree that it looked natural. Well, yes, you could say it lacks light, it lacks this or that, but it looks natural. However, here in Formula 111, it looks very artificial. The car looks, it seems like a toy, and the reflection is very poor. In other words, regarding Formula 1 2010, we could say that, without a doubt, the only area where Formula 1 2011 excels is that it is less dull. In other words, the image has more brightness, resembling the lighting you might find at the level of brightness in a real ombua, but in every other aspect, it is worse. In other aspects, Formula 111 is worse than Formula 110 because it feels much more natural in every way. Moreover, one detail that I really don't like about Formula 111 is that the sky, if you notice, is cloudy. The way Formula 111 shows you that it is night is... Putting a cloudy sky that looks somewhat orange is honestly a disaster. It doesn't manage to convey the darkness of being in a pitch-black night in Singapore. Especially in the TV camera, you know. The onboard camera, I tell you, can seem somewhat misleading because it has filters and all, but the TV camera is a disaster. I mean, it looks extremely unnatural, not real at all, and it doesn't give the feeling of being at night. In the first comparison, there is clearly a downgrade from Formula 110 to Formula 111, so we start strong and move on to the next game, which was Formula 112. And in Formula 1 2012, we do have a clear improvement. Here, there is indeed a very clear enhancement, because I believe that what Formula 1 to 12 does very well is find that balance between Formula 1 to 10 and Formula 1 to 11. I believe that here lies the key. It reduces all that contrast, all that excess saturation that Formula 1 to 11 had. Additionally, it corrects certain elements, like what we were discussing earlier, the definition of the track, the lines, all of this that looked very unnatural in 11. Here in 12, it feels a bit more real, it feels a bit more natural. I think Formula 112 really scores a lot of points there. On the other hand, it's also like Formula 110, but they also increase that brightness a little bit, removing that feeling of the image being dull, right? It's like finding a very good mix between both, which I believe gives a pretty good result. Here I do think there was an improvement, not glory, with a final result that is quite good and quite beautiful. And from F1 2012 we move on to F1 2013, which is very similar to 12 graphically, but not exactly the same, especially at night. We see it next. F1 2013 introduces something that has the real Formula 1 broadcast. That is, the real broadcast. The real lighting, you could say, and now we do see a very big change in the lighting of Ombua. Now we really notice the powerful brightness, the strong lighting of the Ombua, which is what you actually see in a real Formula 1 Ombua, where the lighting is very intense because there is indeed a lot of light for all the drivers to see very well. It might be a bit excessive, but I think that unlike in Formula 111, where we had errors with the track definition and where the lighting looked very flat, it appeared very homogeneous, as if there were no changes in the light on the track. Here in 13, I can really see, I start to notice changes in lighting, that there are shadows, and that the light shines more in one area or another. All of this is better appreciated in Formula 1 2013, although I believe they do go a bit overboard with that extremely intense lighting, especially on the Ferrari, for example, where it is very noticeable, like a real camera or an Ombua of a Ferrari in that year 2013. The red didn't look as striking, as vibrant. It was a slightly duller red. That's why I say they go. It's like a roller coaster, this evolution of nighttime lighting, because it feels like they are swaying from one side to the other. And in fact, they make a mistake again. In case you haven't noticed, it's the same mistake they made in Formula 111, which was fixed in Formula 112, and it's the issue with the sky. The sky in Formula 111, as I mentioned before, conveys that it is a pitch-black night by showing a cloudy sky that is almost orange. In Formula 112, that was already corrected. It no longer looked orange, it looked black. Well, dark black, dark blue. And here in 13, they go back again to a step behind. It's like a Formula 1 2011, but improved. I mean, it's what I've said. They bring back the brightness. They bring back that very intense lighting sensation. And now, all of a sudden, we return again to the cloudy sky. It's like an improved version of Formula 111, isn't it? Yes, it is quite an improvement. There's improvement, though not in all aspects. The improvement from Formula 112 was more noticeable compared to Formula 111 than this one. Because this version has some things that are better but others that are not, it has ended up a bit in no man's land. And with this, we arrive at one of the most anticipated moments of this video, which is Formula 1 2014. That's right, it's time for Formula 1 2014. And I'm sure many of you are already thinking it will be just like 2013, as it's a copy, and honestly, you're not wrong. Formula 1 2014 is an almost insulting copy of Formula 1 2013, but not at night. This has surprised even me, I must admit, while making the video. But the reality is that the lighting improves in Formula 1 2014. While it is true that this game is a cheap copy of the previous one, Formula 1 2013, in absolutely every aspect, I had never noticed that the nighttime lighting, it does change. They maintain the base of the lighting presented in Formula 1 13, but distribute it much better. It looks more natural because what they do is, if you notice, reduce that brightness. In Singapore, the real onboard footage resembles much more what Formula 1 14 shows than what Formula 1 13 shows. The excessive brightness that the car had, as well as the track in 13, is significantly reduced here to a lighting that is closer to reality. In fact, the TV camera also approaches reality more. Not only all this, but also the sky. We go back to eliminating that cloudy orange night sky that Formula 1 13 showed us, and here in 2014 we find a much more realistic sky. With a much more natural darkness, against all odds, Formula 1 2014 presents a noticeable improvement. I mean, really, of all the ones we've seen over these 4 years, this is the second best, if not the best, I would say, along with the improvement of Formula 1 12. So be careful, as no one expected it, but Formula 1 14 has surprised us. Because the truth is that it looks quite good at night. I mean, I felt like it was the same as 13, but no, I mean, play 13, then play 14, and you'll notice the difference. Even the car's reflection is different compared to Formula 1 13 in this regard. So yes, there was an improvement here in Formula 1 2014. And now we really enter one of the most important changes, one of the critical points of this adventure in the evolution of Formula 1 games, and it is Formula 1 2015. Because there was a year when the console generation changed, and there was a very important change in terms of graphics. So, I present to you Formula 1 2015. Here, the graphical leap is spectacular, not only at night but at all levels, during the day and at night. The graphical leap is impressive, that's all there is to it. The definition, the reflections of both the car and the track, for the first time represent the effect of the headlights in a much more realistic way, significantly more realistic than what we have had up to this point. It is lighting that feels supernatural, super realistic when you come from playing all the previous versions we've seen now. The 10, the 11, the 12, the 13, all those changes we've seen from 11 to 12, from 13 to 14, are insignificant. They are tiny changes compared to this change, which is a significant change. The only small problem we might find is that, just like what happened with Formula 1 2010, perhaps the lighting is a bit more subdued than it should be, right? Even though there are lights and it looks good, you notice a little less brightness than we might expect to have in a real Formula 1 camera. We lower that brightness a little bit again, but really, that's the only small issue it has. It's truly the best lighting by far so far. Advantage, Formula 1 2015. And now we continue with Formula 1 2016, which was a great game, but let's see if it also met expectations with the graphics and this night lighting. It seems that Codemasters was not able to make 2 consecutive games that clearly improved their nighttime lighting, without nuances. It appeared that they didn't know how to do it 2 years in a row, and of course, that tradition had to continue. F1 2016, like F1 2011, made a rather strange move regarding lighting. One could say that it repeats the approach of Formula 1 2010 because we once again have too much color saturation, too many contrasts, too many elements of defined on the track, right? We see some track lines too well, with too much color, when it doesn't look like that in reality. It doesn't look natural or real. The reflection of the cars is terrible. I mean, really? You see what we saw in 15 or even in 14, I would say, and now you see this. I mean, with the same graphics engine that we had in 15, you did this to me. In other words, the car looks, as I said, the reflections look terrible. The color of the car is horrible. In the case of McLaren, it is outrageous. Okay, it might not be as terrible as in Formula 1 2011, to say the least. 5 years have passed, but it must be said that the downgrade is very clear. There is a very clear downgrade in this game regarding night lighting. The only positive thing that could be said is that at least this time they were playing with the sky like a roller coaster. It seemed like one game had a cloudy sky and the other did not. Here, it seems they wanted to maintain a dark and realistic sky across 3 consecutive games. 14, 15 and 16, not that fake orange cloudy sky. So it is in the only positive point, but it is very clear that this is a downgrade that does not improve at all what Formula 1 2015 had done. So, making 2 consecutive games improving the lighting? No. But why not make 2 in a row worsening? Formula 1 2017 did exactly the same thing as Formula 1 2016, but made it even worse. It's incredible. It seems that what they've done is take all that contrast, all that color saturation that was already quite high in Formula 1 16 and exaggerate it even more. It looks extremely fake, extremely unrealistic, extremely unnatural, worse even than 16, which already looked unnatural compared to 15, but this has taken it to the next level. The car still looks horrible, and the environment looks even worse. And okay, this time the sky isn't cloudy or orange, but the sky isn't just about putting a black color and that's it. You have to give it those shades because in the end, there is lighting that creates certain effects in the sky. I mean, I find it extremely fake and well, the car is already incredible. Because this has gathered the worst from all the games. I mean, the image in this game, despite having very saturated colors, and the definition of the track lines sometimes having a lot of contrast, is also perceived as a bit dull. It's like the problems that were in Formula 1 15 and Formula 1 10, but it also has the problems from Formula 1 16 and Formula 1 11. So it's like you've taken all the worst aspects from all the games, and this is what we've ended up with. I don't even know what to call it, but it's a disaster. Graphically, I don't really understand how the community hasn't complained about this over the years. I mean, I don't know how people haven't complained about this because graphically, it is clearly horrendous and is the peak of unnaturalness. I mean, really? I can't even look at it anymore. It's a complete disaster, come on. Well, if we jump a year to Formula 1 2018, we find ourselves in a situation similar to... But better, right? It was very difficult to really make it worse, and it's true that Formula 1 2018 tries to fix in part that mess that Formula 1 2017 had made, and also a bit of Formula 1 2016. The sky improves significantly compared to 17. It stops being that uniform black spot. It's absurd what Formula 1 2017 had. And it must be said that there is an overall improvement in the lighting. The tone returns a bit to what Formula 1 2016 had. It resembles the lighting of 2016 much more, without being perfect or brilliant. But at least we escaped from the disaster that 2017 had. It should be noted that both 2016 and 2018 look better from the TV camera. They appear much more realistic. That's why I like to differentiate between the onboard and the TV camera. But in Formula 1 2018 and Formula 1 16, the onboard view leaves a lot to be desired, because mainly the car looks quite unrealistic. The car feels very unrealistic, unnatural, and the reflections are very poor, and the environment is not very good either. But in the television camera, it is true that both perform quite a bit better, 18 and 16. But luckily for everyone, not everything was lost. The damn goat of this saga has arrived. Formula 1 2019 is here. What a release from Codemasters. With this game, with these graphics, and with this lighting, they have just destroyed, they have just obliterated everything that came before. The reflections of the cars are excellent. The definition of the track is tremendous. The environment, everything is absolutely perfect. The tires even look incredible. The tones, the colors, the shine, the effect of the lights, it is a masterpiece. In the homeboard cameras, a quite realistic blur effect is finally achieved, which is similar to the effect found in the real F1 cameras of Formula 1. That blur effect, which is almost identical to what we find here in Formula 1 19, and also the external camera reaches the next level, the television camera. It looks cinematic, it looks super good, and it reaches a level of realism never seen before in the saga. It is by far the best lighting we have encountered so far in a Formula 1 game, and perhaps if there is a small negative point to mention, it is a bit of an excess in that light blurring effect, because it gives the impression in some circuits, like Singapore for example, that there is fog. As I said, this effect can sometimes be seen in real cameras, but it is a little less pronounced, more reduced than what is seen here. But come on, it's a detail that, in comparison to everything else, is tiny and practically irrelevant. So F1 2019 undoubtedly marked a turning point. Not only in terms of gameplay, which was for me the best game in the series, but also in terms of graphics. And when I say it marked a turning point, I mean it seriously. Because from here on, the changes have already been much less drastic than what we have seen so far. And now we are going to see as much of a leap from one game to another as we have seen up to now. For example, with Formula 1 2018-20 and Formula 1 2021. Something unusual happens in this saga. It maintains the high level of Formula 1 19. There are no major changes. The graphics are practically the same in terms of nighttime lighting, and it is true that there is some detail in the sky that does change. Perhaps in 22 it looks a bit more bluish. But they are very, very tiny things, as I said. They are details. Very, very insignificant details. There isn't much to say because, as I mentioned, the games are very similar in that nighttime lighting compared to Formula 1 2019, so there isn't much to say here. Although they might overuse the fog effect, I mentioned earlier that effect of blurring the light so much that it even looks like there is fog. It should be noted that both are visible and look very good, maintaining a very high level of lighting. However, we do believe that in Formula 1 23, there is a slight improvement in the reflections of our car, which was not present in Formula 1 22. Yes, I would say that the biggest change is between Formula 1 22 and Formula 1 23 in the reflections of the car, which I find much better in Formula 1 23. At this point, the details to improve are becoming increasingly difficult to appreciate. It is more complicated to notice them because, as I said, the games are already very polished in terms of graphics. With this, we move on to the latest game in the series that we have to date, which is Formula 1 24, and in which, although you might think otherwise, there is also a small change in nighttime lighting. Because that fog effect I mentioned, right? Like there is fog from the lights that contribute to that night in Singapore, for example, or in Bahrain as well. In this case, in Formula 1 22, it is significantly reduced in Formula 1 24. In Formula 1 24, we find that there is less blurriness in the image. It looks a bit clearer. I don't know if I should say sharper. It is true that I believe the fog effect also caused certain colors to appear a little less vibrant, less saturated. Perhaps in Formula 1 24 we appreciate a little more of that, as there is less of that blurred, foggy feeling. It seems that certain colors look a bit more striking, more saturated, right? But as I said, these are tiny details that are hardly noticeable from game to game. At this point, the truth is that graphically the game looks quite good, making it difficult to find those differences. In this way, we would conclude our journey through the evolution of nighttime lighting in all the Formula 1 games of the Codemasters saga. I hope you liked the video a lot. If so, as always, a good like from you is appreciated. As for me, that's all. I just want to say that we will see each other in the next one.